I usually find that there's two questions that are almost like the same. And the first one is, how do I protect that idea?
Yeah.
Right? And the second one, or maybe how do I search to make sure someone else hasn't protected that idea?
That's important.
And then the second question is, or maybe it's at the same time, is this a good idea?
Yeah.
And this is where, again, I can answer whether or not it's a good idea in the consumer space.
I think you can.
I can't answer
Yeah.
the other side, is that can it be protected? We help people with ideas get them to revenue. All right, welcome to a special podcast. Today I've got a very cool guest. Actually, we're also a client of yours, Peter Lando from Lando and Anastasia. Is that get that right?
That's right.
That's right. Look at it. Welcome. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
No, it's great. Thank you for having me. It'll be it's a fun topic, and I love talking about IP.
Well, that's what I want to dive in, because there's certain questions like, I get asked every day, and look at, we're more in the doer space of, like, you have an idea and you want to get it to manufacturing and get it to launch. That's like, we do that stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to how do I form the LLC, what do I need to do to patent it? Should I do a patent search? These are questions that, like, I need to defer.
Yeah,
like, I shouldn't be your doctor or your lawyer.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
So how did you get started? I guess let's give a little background.
In IP?
Yeah.
Well, I was. This goes back. I've been practicing now for over 30 years, but I was a chemical engineer.
Okay.
And I worked for a large chemical company. And I was kind of on the path, right? I mean, they sent me. I have an MBA. They were sending me for German language. But the more I got exposed to business, the more I was recognizing that premiums, right, margins,
were
happening. Why? Well, because the products are patented. What is there something that we can do that others can't do?
Right.
And so that led to a curiosity and questions, and before long, it led to, well, I'm going to leave all this behind, and it was hard to do, but like anything else in life, you're pulled in a direction, and I went to law school. And so with that background, it was technology and business, and now I thought the missing piece was the law.
It's an entrepreneur's journey. you start off one thing and you do this, and like, I had this same experience where all of a sudden I realized I had a different calling, and I had to reinvent myself to do something completely different than what I was doing for 25 years. So.
Right, and the people around you were like,
yeah, what are you doing?
Exactly.
what do you
exactly?
Yeah, So,
but you have a vision. You hold on to it.
And look at, maybe it's a curse, maybe it's a vision. I don't know. I'm still, the debate's out. But
but your success is telling me it was a vision.
Yeah. And the vision continues. So that's pretty cool. And so out of all the law, you chose to go to IP because of that background. You
have to have a technical background. That's not why, but what I was seeing, and so we're talking about the mid 80s at this point, 1980s. I was seeing technology as the kind of the mover of markets, the makers of economies.
That's a good
vision. And with the enforcement of intellectual property, it has since, and I say frequently, it's the currency. It's the currency of the day. What is it that you can do, differentiate you? Mm-hmm. We talked about differentiation, that others can't, right?
Yeah.
So and I want to protect that.
That's the key.
I want to find that difference, and I want to protect it.
Yeah, and that's where we're super aligned, because, I'll only take on projects that I can see a clear difference. Like there has to be something that stands out that makes people go, wow, how come no one thought of doing it that way before? Or, wow, that's like, I can't believe that doesn't exist. So that's, again, in our world, I'm not bringing everybody's idea to market. We are bringing the unique ideas to market, because that's really what that's where the growth is. That's where the success comes from.
I totally agree. But sometimes it takes some probing. Sometimes it takes some poking around and looking at the different facets of what's in front of you.
Sometimes it takes a couple of angry reviews because I said no to somebody. So our Google review isn't, it's good, but they're mad because I didn't think the idea was something that they had the ability to get through, or that the idea I just knew was going to be a difficult uphill battle to get to revenue.
Right.
And honestly, that's a thing that I have to be extremely careful with, because everyone has to get to revenue. That's where, if the business fails before you get there, right? And you talked about margin. So That is a huge part of like the business process. And in that margin, we have to find that thing that we can protect.
Right.
And that's really where, probably about 4 years ago, our journey aligned a lot more because, we were just trying to figure out what our process was, get through this process.
Yeah.
And that's when we realized, like, wait a minute, we're starting to run into, we found the thing.
Yep.
And it was the thing that we found that is patentable collectively with our client was, where now we've got to like go out and find a patent attorney and it's much easier for us to work with something that we're working collaboratively on to say, here, Peter, this is what we found.
Yeah.
Versus, having one of those large firms or volume firms tell us this is this patented idea. And now it's unmanufacturable.
Yeah, I think that's right. But it's instructive as well, because whether it's upstream when I see an idea or I'm presented with an idea, and sometimes it's like, well, it takes some probing, right, to find that what's patentable, what's a differentiator, what can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday, right, figuratively, the differentiator. And it continues right on through the development that you're engaged with. It's not just I'm presented with this and it'll always be this. Things evolve, markets evolve, and the market feedback will inform and instruct your approach as well.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of patience and sometimes a lot of effort, but you get there.
Yeah. Well, I'll now that I remember, Unshrink, it was probably our first product that we were working on. So you were probably our first patent attorney that we ever worked with and again, that was a little pre-52Launch, but that's what developed us into 52Launch.
Right.
Was, helping that entrepreneur who had a pretty cool idea that we saw the value in. We helped bottle make that, brand it, but it came to us with the patent, and look at your team was easy to work with, and that's what I liked about it. And it was real, like we knew exactly what we were expecting, what we were getting, and although someone else is managing it, we were very much part of that conversation. So
yeah, well, my partner Nicole Palmer was on that, and she's wonderful, and I remember meeting Des, and you had a sense there was a real market need out there. So now the challenge is, well, how do we protect that?
Right.
And it's fun. It never stops being fun.
That is the part that is amazingly fun, is that like every day there's a different idea. Even though our process is relatively the same, it's the ideas that keep it exciting.
Yeah.
Right? This is just a new challenge. How are we going to make this? What's it going to look like? Like, where's our, there's just a lot of variables. So, I'm trying to understand your world and my world, and when someone contacts you or your team for the first time with an idea, what are the questions that they ask you? Like, what are the first questions that they're looking from you guys?
Well, I don't often work with individuals myself, but I have over the years, and I've never lost the respect it takes to develop something.
Right.
So when I'm presented, I try to step back. I want to get a patent. Well, okay, you want to get a patent. Why do you want to get a patent? I like to explore with them myself. Do you have a business plan? Is this just an idea that you want something to hang on your wall? Is it part of a plan, and will a patent help that plan? Right? It's a business tool in the end, and I want to know who's your market. I want to know what inputs do you need. I want to know what customers are you going to reach out for. So I'm trying to get a broader picture than the thing that I'm looking at. And so I have that conversation, and I'm very willing and happy to have conversation. Once they find out you're a patent attorney, they introduce your friends to you.
Yeah.
So you're always in touch, because everybody, I think Shark Tank and programs like yours have instilled and it's the American way.
Well, look, we couldn't do what 52Launch does without the advent of Amazon.
Yeah.
Right, where they've proven to everybody that they can go direct to consumer. And that's good. But then Shark Tank, for us, the education component that I would have to do if Shark Tank didn't teach all these people how to be entrepreneurs would be impossible.
And the questions they ask.
Insightful. Right? So those are all answered now. So when I get to meet people, they've actually, it actually helps me, because I'm like, you asked the same thing, like a licensing deal. Like, when have you seen a licensing deal that Mr. Wonderful's offered, and that's actually
He's a shrewd operator,
one that you would take, right? Like, so the notion of licensing deals out there for me I equate it to angel investors. I think they call them angel investors because I've just never seen one.
No, on the head of a pin.
Yeah.
No, I like to challenge folks when they come with ideas. I never tire of hearing ideas. As I said, I very much am a believer in innovation, moving economies forward, and the wonder of things I've seen that have come to fruition. So I have a great perch on seeing tomorrow, I say. I see tomorrow in ideas.
That is such a teachable moment to both our audiences, right? And because I'm the same thing. I would not recommend you invest a dime until you understand how you're going to commercialize on it, right? Because if I just own a patent, what does that mean?
Right.
Okay, great. You've written a patent. You got recognized. You're in the U.S. Patent Office, trademark. You've got a record of it.
Yeah.
But what are you doing with it? And that's the part
But
that
most patents are not are for inventions that are not commercialized, right? There's millions of patents.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the patent, and we can talk a little more about that process, but it is what's the plan. It's funny, as my career has evolved, I have a lot of large clients, large companies, and you do patent work for them, and it's just it's another one on the pile. I enjoy it if I'm.
But they have a strategy for that.
It's a strategy, and I'm part of that.
Right, and that's what I mean. Whether it's commercializing or it's part of a strategy to protect something or it's a strategy to grow the business, like there's always a business conversation that happens around patents.
Absolutely. There's real dollars.
It's real dollars.
It gets expensive. So, and I'm happy and proud, and it's very fulfilling to be part of that. But when it's a startup company or an entrepreneur and they want to pass, this is the enterprise. Right? So they need to go to investors. The investors are going to ask, well, is it protected? Right? Same conversation you hear on Shark. Is it protected? Is it patentable?
Yep.
Is it manufacturable? Is it marketable? Right? So this means so much foundationally to them that I'm just...
well, again, another great teachable moment, because I'm going to tell you this is where, again, in my experience, I understand the difference now, and Mike picked up very quickly on it, who's in my department. It comes down to the patents that are volume patent store, like they're just so recognizable.
Yeah.
They write whatever you tell them to write, and they put it out there. And I have to kind of sometimes explain to people that like that's just that they think they're protected on a provisional patent, and they have no idea that that's 12 months. Like it's just a hook, and it's like it's
unfortunate.
It's really unfortunate, and I think that's where there's almost a disservice to that.
Very much. Yeah.
But again, when I get those, I try and turn them into, take lemons, turn them into lemonade.
Well, you're stuck. I when you talk about provisional applications, it's really a placeholder.
Yeah.
And when they're not well written, they can't support claims that come later in a regular utility patent that claims the priority back. So you file a provisional application, I get date certain, right? This date. And then within a year, I have to convert that to a regular patent application.
So let's just make sure the audience on both sides know. What happens if you miss that filing date in 12 months?
It's never published. No one will see it. It's secret if you've maintained it as such. But it just goes away like it never happened.
Right. Now, can I refile after a year on that same item?
You can, but you won't get that priority date.
You won't get that priority.
You can only get 1 year.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And so the key with provisional patent applications, they're a wonderful tool if you use them properly. They have to be written robustly to support claims, which in a when I say patent, utility patent, ones that we're all kind of thinking, the claims in the utility patent that's converted later need to be supported in that provisional application, and that's the trick. I think a lot of people say provisional application. It's become kind of a surrogate for lesser or cheaper or quickly done, and those are all unfortunate.
Yeah, we run. So for us, and maybe you can help me correct it if we're not doing it right. But, again, we're also working in my world, limited budgets. We're not dealing with enterprise clients. We're dealing with individuals who have an idea. So if they have the money, obviously we want to get it patented, protected from the onset. For us, the design for manufacturing part is where most people fail. Like design companies are great at designing things, but it's really comes down to how it manufactures and how it manufactures cost effectively, because you brought up margin. So margin's important. It's in that process that if you have money, we'll find something that it usually is a utility type patent, and that's where we can either engage right away for the non-provisional. If you don't have funds, we look at it like, okay, just before the website launch, file your provisional, give it some details, and that's got 12 months now that we can hopefully start generating revenue to start getting involved in paying for the non-provisional.
Right.
That's kind of, I think that's in our world, I call it the not rich man's version of getting a patent completed.
Well, it's true. It's not. I mean, you don't even need claims in a provisional. So, and that's where a lot of the time is spent on drafting claims, which is it's the hitting the baseball, I call it. It looks easy, but the best people in the world do it 30% of the time well.
Right, yeah.
They get a hit and they're making millions. So drafting claims is very difficult, very challenging, and you don't need those in a provisional, but you do need the specification, the story that's told.
Right.
And it's very interesting. It's important not to spill too many ideas in there, because when you do make that priority claim, the provisional will become public. So the world will see those idle ideas that are never converted.
Gotcha.
So
that's a really good point.
It's important to write it robustly enough, but not too much.
Gotcha.
I see universities mess this up all the time, and they have a similar strategy to what you were mentioning. So a university licensing office will file provisionals, and they won't proceed in converting those unless they have a licensee. That's their whole business model, right?
Okay.
So they're filing for quick provisionals that are poorly done, in my opinion, either too narrow or thinking they're doing themselves a service by throwing in every possibility.
Yeah.
You know, hundreds of peptides listed when they know only a handful are really working.
Gotcha.
You know, so then you go to convert it, and the whole world sees these idle ideas that have yet to be proven, but are potentially viable. So you just shared them with the world.
So in the consumer product space, that's where I'm in, and I agree. Like, you know, there's plenty of reasons outside, but consumer space is just generally like a product idea, right? So I do find that most of it is the Brookstone method, where they've taken something that's already familiar and just made one thing better. Yeah. But in that space, I usually find that there's two questions that are almost like the same. And the first one is, how do I protect that idea? Yeah. Right? And the second one, or maybe how do I search to make sure someone else hasn't protected that idea?
That's important.
And then the second question is, or maybe it's at the same time, is this a good idea? Yeah. And this is where, again, I can answer whether or not it's a good idea in the consumer space.
I think you can.
I can't answer the other side. Is that can it be protected?
Well, that's the big question. I'd like to share with them, because I do recognize the resources are somewhat limited. I try to teach people how to do searches. Okay. Anything they can do on their own. So when somebody gets back to an earlier question, be prepared. Right. Right. It helps that you've done some simple patent searching, and there are many tools. They're all free, where you can go in on a word search, spend the time and see what's out there, right? What's the landscape? What is it that I have to navigate around to find that white space that I can protect?
That you can protect.
Right? It might be an adjunct. It might not be the whole of it. It might be but it might be an important part that it can't move forward without. Right? Right. So it just takes probing and doing a little of that research yourself. Then when you come and I have the full picture, now I can help. I could never give you a 100% accurate answer as this.
No, I didn't think anybody could.
Right. But I will share. I'm an easy. You tell me a story, I'm with you. I'm flying with you, because I think it's an entrepreneurial spirit. I love flying with people who want to share ideas. It's something about you're allowing me into your hope. Yeah. Well, wow. Is there anything greater than that?
It's an optimism. It's infectious. I say that all the time. Like my clients' optimism and like their attitude, it's infectious. So
exactly.
Hey, if any of those clients have the willingness to get through that process, I'm going to support them everything I can do, and that's what we do. Like that's every one of our clients. So you got to get to that finish line. Failures. Success isn't guaranteed, but like in our camp, failure is not an option. So what else do we have to do? How do we get there? Yeah. And that's a really good point. So in that context, you talked about some tools. Like I know there's like Google Patent out there.
Yeah, you can do Google Patent. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, you can do searches. Okay. And there's even tutorials how to do them.
Perfect. Okay.
On the website.
Well, that's great advice. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think a lot of the calls I get, again, I get calls sometimes of people who've been to a patent attorney and they've got a provisional patent. They think they're protected, and they have, like, I have to explain to them, like, guys,
Yeah,
that's a
maybe
placeholder.
not. Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe you need to call the people back who you were talking to that
Yeah.
got you all excited, or
Yeah.
didn't explain it to you.
Yeah.
But so yeah, do some research, right? Like that's part of it. It's and again, for me, I probably get them a little bit further downstream because the question is this a good idea?
Yeah.
What we're really starting to see in the last 3-4 years is that someone wakes up in the morning and says, I need a better widget in my house, and they go on Amazon, and
Yeah.
that widget's not there. And they go on Google, and that widget's not there. And they start thinking, wait a
Okay.
minute, how come this widget isn't available? I can't be the
Right.
only one that's thought about it.
Right.
And then that's really where, that's like a really good test, right? And look if you're an inventor, you have two paths: that white space that you just talked about, or, and I'll tell you, it's easier, is to look at market share. Like you're either creating a new space or you're taking market share from somebody else. If you're taking market share from somebody else, like if I want to be in the pet space, which is a fantastic space, sometimes you're better off finding something that's a good area that's got a 3-star rating on products that people are buying in droves,
Yeah.
and focusing on what is making that a 3-star instead of a 4-star.
Yeah.
And that might not have something that's patentable, but if it does, it's usually either in the design, it's usually in a very specific utility or the way we're manufacturing something.
Yeah.
And that's where, it becomes that part of that brand and that culture. But those are your two paths. You either have white space
Yeah.
or you have something that you recognize in a product that isn't serving the market well.
We used to say, how do you build a better mousetrap, right?
The mousetrap is the
Right.
best way.
So it probably is patentable if there's some utility. You mentioned utility, whether in its manufacturing, in its use, and if all else fails, I suppose in its look.
Yep.
Right? Design is a powerful tool that's often overlooked.
Right. Or maybe just trademark, right? Like
Well, yeah, that's usually in the kind of the first to the market thing, or where a trademark. These unicorns that pop up every now and then, they're serving a need, like an Uber
Yeah.
service. The Uber mark had saturated the marketplace before patents
Right,
had come. So it became the market itself. They created
yeah.
a market, and
Kleenex.
everybody wants the brand, right?
Right.
So yeah, trademarks can be very powerful if they're done well. And we're drifting into trademarks, but it's all IP. Right?
That's what
it's
I
all
love.
created assets.
Well, and you nailed it. Earlier on, you said that it is about getting, like when you again, there's two types of investors, right? There's investors that are looking for the IP and will invest in that and give a research grant, or however they give money to places that can R&D that concept. In the product world, it's later on down the road. It's when you have, again, if you watch Shark Tank, I don't make the rules, don't hate the player, just appreciate the game. The number one question on Shark Tank is, what are your sales?
Yeah,
right. So
prove the
when
concept.
your sales, like you see the reaction on the panel, ooh or ha, right? Like it's one. So your goal has to be to get the sales.
Yeah.
And it has to be an abundance of sales. When you have that, that is the first time that people are going to look at you for an investable business. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be happy with that investment or that offer, but it's the first step. But I guarantee you, part of the questioning is, second question is, what is your cost of acquisition? So you need to know your customer acquisition cost. But then, is this protected?
Yeah.
And this is like a huge part. When investors get involved, they want to know that that investment is safe.
Yeah.
And so it is an important part of the process, and it needs to be fit in there somehow, affordably, and to get to that point. But the, consumer products is a longer play to get to an investor, whereas like IP, sometimes that IP could be worth millions of dollars when you're dealing in, like, let's say AI or
if it's
in chemical,
supporting,
or if it's supporting something in that business.
doubt.
At all. But again, that's where the business is already in place. So the trust of will this work or will this not work would be one of your big clients or a farmer, whatever company that's out there. They've already proven that they're good at selling things in this item. So.
No, you're absolutely right. In the end of the day, and I've never lost sight of this, and perhaps that's my background prior to my legal career. I've never lost sight of the work I do has to support something that's making revenue, that's making profits, it's supporting those things. Otherwise, what's the point? I don't want to do the work for people who just want to hang it on the wall.
Right.
I want a business. I said earlier, I want it to be a business tool, something that's going to provide you leverage in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so, I use a simple little kind of. I've done a lot of diligence in my career, a lot of acquisitions, divestitures of intellectual property assets, and a lot of patenting. And the way I look at both is whether it's the invention or the target. Just think of a big white sheet, a whiteboard. I've seen a lot of them around here. Just a dot on the whiteboard. Okay, that's the invention. That's the target. But the work, and any patent attorney can patent that dot on the page. Sometimes they're very nasty. But the real effort is in kind of like a stone in a still pond, are those circles that come around, right?
Right.
That's where the talent is. That's where the challenge for the patent attorney, and to have that ability to think that way, and the entrepreneur to recognize that each of those innovation, so that's invention, these are innovations.
Yeah.
Each one of those circles around the dot keep different folks away, right? Gives you some space.
Yeah.
That's the way you have to look at patenting, in my opinion.
That's a great analogy, because that makes total sense, because you want to have a little protection, you want to get there, your innovation's there.
So you're bringing products to market, but you don't want to kind of have a shoehorn or a wedge to find a spot. So you want people to you want a little room, right?
Right.
Then that's yours. Because competitors are going to come. If something's successful, they're going to copy you.
Do they come when it's not successful?
There you go.
Nobody rips off an idea that sucks.
No. Oh, yeah.
They might improve on it,
right.
and
So you
realize
want to have that buffer.
You want to have that buffer.
Yeah.
So on the ripple in the pond theory that you just said, what happens when you throw the stone and take no action?
They take no action?
Yeah, I'm getting around to like a lot of people think that the patent is everything, and I wrote a patent and now I'm going to be rich.
No, and that's one of the misunderstandings on patents, right? Intellectual property is very important, as I say, it's the currency of the day, but understanding is very weak. So a patent just means you have the right to exclude others. It doesn't mean you have the right to do anything, right? So it's a negative right.
Ooh.
It's an exclusionary right. It's not I've heard this a million times. It's not a monopoly to do anything.
Gotcha.
It's the right to exclude others. So you may have a patent on something, and you may be infringing another's patent.
Right.
Right? So these spaces may overlap like a Venn diagram. So one should do, all keeping in mind that sales and profits are the most important, but one should have that early diligence to know what's out there. How much space do I have to operate in? And then patent, and it's an American spirit. It's a land grab, I call it.
Yeah.
You go in, you put your flag down, and you don't just want that spot, that dot on the page. You want
you want that ripple. You want to expand out.
So that's the thing, and that's the patent drafter, we mentioned claims earlier, has to draft claims around the invention that provide a buffer, because competitors are going to come in or try to come in.
Yeah.
And so that's always been the challenge, and I very much enjoy that part of it. But patents, you should appreciate that patents give you no right to do anything. They just give you other than exclude others from that.
From that ripple or those circles. Yeah. That's extremely powerful, because I think most people look at it the exact opposite way.
I know.
They automatically think, I got this idea, mine.
Right.
Like
I have a patent.
And now they're just looking to, I guess that's the part that I'm just, because I'm so entrepreneurial spirited. I've never, I've worked for people, but I've always been very independent in, the service I provide. And that's, again, my father was that way. Yeah, I think one of the things is if you're looking at an idea in the consumer product space, you have to have a plan. I think that's like.
Oh yeah.
I like to do a little thing, and I call them hard-hitting facts, right? So what are some of the facts or hard truths that you wish people knew that would help them be more successful?
Well, I just shared one.
Yeah, that was a good one. It was a good segue.
I worry sometimes it's become a sport of kings, intellectual property. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
To have it done well, it's very expensive. Some of the other are intellectual property rights can coexist, right? So you can have a utility patent and a design patent, and sometimes I encourage that.
The combination of both.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And there are economical ways to go about that as well. So you need to explore that.
In a design patent, does that have the same type of, like, when do I have to file for a design? Am I limited after I've launched a product, or can I?
It's the same
It's the same way.
year grace period.
Okay.
But by waiting until after you've launched or gone public in any way, you've limited your international rights.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, right, so we should think about, that's another one.
Yep.
Absolute novelty, right? So you should file, and then you make it public after you file.
Got it. Yeah, that's what we do. So.
Right, and so then, the 1 year priority period for a utility patent or provisional is 6 months with a design application.
Okay.
You file, you have a priority period. Same with trademarks. You have 6 months to go international and make a priority claim.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
So those things, I mean, I could get into the nuances of each IP. Some of the other things that I think is a hard-hitting fact that people don't recognize is that trade secrets are about 80% of all intellectual property. Right? That they're not in patents.
No.
It's trade secrets.
It's just that's
It's
like when you hear Coca-Cola, like there's only 2 people that know it, and they don't have the whole formula together. Or
well, yeah, everybody points to Coke or the Colonel Sanders recipe or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But those are very well known. But there's a lot of intellectual property, these interstitial learnings that I'm sure you appreciate this. When you're launching a product, there were probably tens, if not hundreds, of failures in making efforts to make it just right.
I equate it to, our business is finding the 10,000 ways not to make something.
Okay, so there's trade secret in all of that.
In every single one of those.
In all those attempts.
Yeah.
Because if someone else knew those, they would have a head start to get where you got ultimately.
And so that to me, I look at that process and it gets missed, again, I look at it this way. Right now in the invention space, the reason why 52Launch exists is because 2 guys who were yes men that figured out things, my partner Dan and myself, were going to say yes. If you have the dream, it's our job to get to that vision.
Yeah.
But the barrier to entry for anybody competing against you is also, like, they're going to look at it, like, I can't do what we do without having all the knowledge of inventor. Like, inventors already brought to me something that they figured out.
Yeah.
The first obvious ways that you would think that you would make it that don't work.
Right.
And then we have to finish it up by saying, okay, there's only so many manufacturing pieces of equipment out in the world.
Right.
Now we have to do metal bending, plastic injection molding, whatever that is. What's the most efficient way to do that? And obviously, look at people think, oh, everything overseas is cheaper in labor. It is not the case. No. Everything that needs to be touched, screwed, assembled has a cost to it.
Sure.
So designing something to minimize how it gets manufactured, assembled, and touched is really like an art form. And when you do that, you're at a point now where you have to have margin. It is 5X. I'll share that with you. The hard-hitting fact is you have to create a product that you have 5X. And I get it. Like, maybe if you're ordering 1,000 pieces, you're not at that volume level.
Yeah.
But you need to know that with the journey, you know that you can have a 5X return, because Amazon just takes a lot of money to be on that platform, which is fine. They've earned it. But yeah, getting the protection, having the design patent, having all that stuff in place gives you that space to get started.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, when you talk about intellectual property, some other facts people should appreciate is everything that's created from pen touching the paper, right? In some medium, and something's expressed in any tangible medium, it's copyrighted. It's instantly copyrighted. And
I did not know that.
It could be owned by your employer, but it's owned by the creator, and it can be registered. It doesn't need to be registered, but it's copyrighted. Same. So there's a lot of nuance in intellectual property that it'd be healthy to know. So if somebody has a new invention that they come to you with, or an idea they come to you with, and dollars are thin, well, immediately they should start putting copyright notice on any written work or any physical work, right? That's copyrighted work right there.
Wow. Okay.
And so that gives them a certain right automatically. And trademark rights are also by use. You don't need a registration necessarily. It's important, and you should have it. It opens certain other rights, but just using a trademark in commerce in the United States gives you trademark rights.
Yeah, for us, the shortcut is if you want the bells and whistles on Amazon, you have to have it. It just, you wait 2 years, or you have a trademark and you get to use all the video and all that. So
that's excellent.
Prime. So yeah, so
that's that knowledge. I have no idea.
Yeah, so that's why we've just come to learn trademark is as important. Like we have to have a trademark if you're going to go on Amazon.
Yeah.
Because it just you're not using the tools to its maximum effectiveness if you don't have a branded trademark.
Yeah.
And you have to wait, and just like.
And it's wise to do anyway. And because Amazon's platform is so huge, and the market's international, then you need to start to think about international trademark.
Well, I would say in my world, the product has to be designed and made and used so that it sells itself. When someone sees it, they're like, "Wow, where'd you get that?"
Yeah.
Right. When that happens, the next question they're going to go is, how do I find it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the trademark comes important, like that brand, that name.
Yeah.
The product sells itself, but the brand is what gets the marketing to someone else to buy it.
Becomes a prestige
right,
type of thing.
Just becomes a name that I can easily find, and eventually it does become that prestige when people find it. But
and there's a whole science in picking names,
there's
and
a
designs
whole
and colors and all this.
It's in our world we want to look the rule, and again, one of our advisors early on was a former Brookstone Sharper Image person. And, he's right. Like, be familiar. When things look familiar, not infringing, but familiar in that space, that's important.
Yeah.
So our brands are designed to, like, really look familiar in the current market, right? Like, you don't want to be familiar from 1980. We need to be familiar in the current market. Unless you have a retro product. Oh, yeah, we've got some retro products, and that's when it works, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's being very acute and very attuned into that product, that consumer. Like you nailed it with the target. In sales, if you don't have a target, if you think that the ripple and products that people that come in and think, oh my God, everybody can buy this. That is the most dangerous statement you can make unless you're a Rockefeller background, because the money it takes to reach everyone is phenomenal.
Right.
We are better off being targeted specifically. Here's the target I'm looking for,
right? Because
then you only have to figure out how to not spend money to get all the people that aren't going to buy,
right?
And target those people, and that's where we get our cost. That's where we get our cost-effective launches, right?
So those first adapters, and then the word of mouth, and it'll take over.
That's exactly how you have to do it, which is a bit of it's the slowest way to grow, but it's the fastest, safest way to grow, right? Unless you've got ample funds to get through that trial and error period quickly. And that's the part that frustrates entrepreneurs a little bit, because they think that or inventors. It's out there.
No,
I'm going to be a hero.
Patience is very important in all these endeavors, no doubt. But I don't, as far as hard hitting and going back to hard hitting facts, I just think that to resolve some of these misunderstandings in intellectual property, to do some early searching, to come prepared, and to be patient with the process. I think are very. I mean, if you want to leave your listeners with anything, I think those.
I agree with you. I would add one more thing to that is I think you just have to define your goals. Like, what is it that you want to do? Yeah. Right? It's just going to be and look at I say like this. I think everybody who has an idea, you either have to find the corporation that has, like, if you have a new, like you said, peptide that is working. Yeah. That's probably where you could get a license, or approach someone like you that has the connections to say, interesting. Yeah. You're probably the expert that would know whether or not that's something that other companies would look for.
Yeah.
In my world, I think you just have to have a plan to say, do I want to have a side hustle? Do I want to have a little bit like a, and to me, side hustles turn into big businesses.
They can, but now maybe the phrase is side hustle. It sounds like it's a kind of a hobby, but there has to be a committed person behind all of that, because it's just. There's highs and lows, there's expense, and things change, right?
Yep, you're constantly
be adaptable and flexible.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's the market around you that changes. Now, who could have predicted a pandemic? But so, did that just shut ideas down? No.
No.
What it did was provide different opportunities, right? Had you used Zoom before that?
No. We were using. I mean, I had
what
used
was Teams?
It.
I didn't know what I was doing. So now it's routine.
Yeah.
And so this remote work, and that's opened up opportunities. So now we need multiple screens.
Correct.
It's microphones, cameras have been improved.
Well, this is where our meeting room is for all of our clients.
Right.
So I used to travel to every trade show. We'd meet people there, the inventors. So it was a lot of work to find.
It's a whole new way of doing business.
Whole new way. So now it's reaching.
So the market sometimes, or the
Yeah, you adapt or die.
Right.
If you don't adapt and you're not creative at that.
Right. So we're not living in a static world.
No, and that's
you know.
that's a really so that's a great
Yeah.
hard hitting fact. Just
Yeah.
you can have a side hustle, but when things you have to be on top of that side
Yeah.
hustle. Side hustle doesn't just mean like I have this ability to print money.
That's for sure.
The way I look at it is that you can either compete and again if you look at the Amazon brands and you can see that there's 19 people that have sold X amount of these over the last month. Well, you know what? Our world is you can have one person dominate like just one space because no one else you're not competing with anybody else. You
Right.
get your own product on Amazon versus buying it from a FBA store that like everybody else is buying it, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I call it a side hustle, but it's really like you're starting a small business.
So
And
how
that's
do you
online.
deal with? I'm curious because you mentioned Amazon several times,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a lot of infringing products that come over copies,
Yeah,
poor copies.
very poor.
And
copy.
sometimes they're in consumer products, and no one's going to get hurt other than, bruised the returns, right? Because somebody's selling something cheaper, made poorly. But things get sold that maybe have to do with health,
Yeah.
right? Water filters or other things that consumers are maybe ingesting or using that are they're copies. They're
Yeah, that's-
infringing products. But just on the consumer end,
Yeah.
right? And no one's dying.
No.
But how do you deal with those?
So again, in our world, we do very little of the ingestion products.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge concern. But no, I'm going to tell you, and it's odd, and I can only go back to an example that it's a company called PopSocket. They used
PopSocket.
to
Yeah.
stick on the back of the
That's
phone.
right.
Yeah.
And it sticks up. Yeah.
And although they had tight patents, they got knocked off really quickly. And honestly, for us, we had a product that required a pop socket, and we thought we were buying it from the factory. They had more teeth on Amazon. I don't know about the rest of the world, but on Amazon, they were able to shut others down by trademark infringement.
Okay.
So Amazon does do a good, like if you're the registered trade brand and you're like Amazon does police the.
But you have to bring it to Amazon.
You have to bring it to Amazon. You have to do it. Look, I think in every case, what do you do when someone does infringe on your product, right? Like that's again, at some point you have to decide. First of all, I always believe that if someone's knocking you off, you're already making money and like you're in a good position.
Right. You want to keep it though.
It comes down to the business conversation and the goals. Like I do believe that you can be a single product company because I have plenty of companies that are single product. We're under the radar with most of them. Like I'm okay being 9,704 on Amazon in the lunch tote bag area.
Yeah.
Because I still, it's $1 million+ business, but it's not, no one knows about us. We're still a very well kept secret. It's when you blow up. That's when people knock you off, and you have to then make sure you trademark. I'm the original. I do the stuff, and I just what does it cost to protect that? Like, is it worth going after those people, or is it worth expanding your business model?
Well, it requires vigilance,
Yeah.
right? So I need to see what's out there and police the market, and it may. I'm not encouraging litigation by any means, but it may take that to show the marketplace I will defend my intellectual property.
Yeah, well, I think that's where the cease and desist letter, like again, for the pop socket, we didn't know. We got a cease and desist letter. We ceased and desist because I don't want to have any issues.
Right. So like anything else, the IP keeps it's the door, it's the lock on your door. It keeps the honest people out.
Right.
But there's always operators, and they come from manufacturing companies in China that pop up here and there, and they crank out products.
Well,
and
that's the one thing.
you shut that one down, and the one opens down the street.
Well, that's
So-
what I always equate. Like everyone says, "Oh, China steals ideas," and look at maybe in the
Actually, they've said that's their country's policy.
right. Yeah.
So I hate to just bring that up.
Well,
but-
and I think it's more in the tech sector. If you think
Yeah.
that they're stealing
No.
your consumer, I mean, first of all the projects are there, everything is there. But again, it's usually in the consumer space. It's more of a Canadian or an American that say, "Well, I saw that," and they saw a reason to either compete with you, or that you didn't do something right, or hey, it's not available in Australia, and that's where the knockoffs start. But again, none of that happens until someone sees that you've been selling a lot of them.
That's fair. That's
Or at least in my world. I'm sure if there's like
No, it's why would I bother? You said earlier, why would I bother copying something that's not?
That's like I've got to do the hard lifting.
So I'm flattered. Okay, now stop. that's what it's.
Yeah. Any closing ideas or conversations that you think we missed? Or
no, this is it's a great space and a conversation, Peter. I can go on forever. So no, I like to encourage innovation. I think in whether it's an economy that's booming or a bit sluggish, as we're experiencing at the moment with interest rates, inflation, what have you, innovation is what pulls us out of these things.
Innovation is what's made this country still at the top of the leader in everything, right? Like that's right. Where that is the American spirit, is that you can wake up today and say, I'm going to change my life. I have an idea. I'm going to go do something. And really, there's nothing that can stop you.
No, it is uniquely. I no insult to the rest of the world, but no. I think there's something about an American entrepreneurial spirit that, in my years as intellectual property counsel for many companies and entrepreneurs and startups, I never get too down about issues that we're confronted with, whether it's the climate or it's just there's too much innovation here. If there's a problem to be solved, we'll solve it.
Exactly, and there's too much creative. Like you just said, like who knew about Zoom? Like we're that innovation means that every roadblock that comes in front of us is just an obstacle we have to figure out how to get around.
I totally believe that.
Yeah. and that's entrepreneurism. Yeah. That's where we exist, right?
Yeah.
Like every time there's like I've never looked like. I always wonder, I'm like, how come I don't recognize the economy is up or down? Like I just like I'm on a consistent path every day. I know what I got to do, and the weather.
You're doing it well. over 400 companies.
Well,
so
I appreciate that.
Great.
I mean, and I like to go back to say you were one of the first ones with us. So on Shrink It. So that's fantastic. But look, I'm going to wrap this up. It was a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Like if there's a part 2, let me know anytime.
Yeah.
Like I said, to us, the hardest part is I'm a doer, so educating people, like I can't sit and counsel everybody. That's what these podcasts are for. So any questions that you guys do have, please email either one of us. I'll make sure that's on the link. And, if you're looking to hire the right patent attorney in the Boston area, actually anywhere in the United States, please reach out to Peter and his team. I can vouch that they've been fantastic for us, and look forward to doing a lot more business together.
Appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Like, share us, follow us, and look forward to more. Have a great day.